Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the video. I am GetGoodGuy and we're back on Battlefield 5 today, but not the current version. What you're seeing on screen is no longer possible. If you go on Battlefield 5 right now, you can't replicate what you're watching. What I'm talking about is the specific sights you can see. Super clean, super open, simplistic, and with a very clear crosshair. Now, in case you didn't see my recent video about this, I'll explain for you. Everyone that does know about it, just hang tight for a minute, I'll make this quick. So the sight you can see me using is the basic Latty sight on the Sten. Well, the difference with this one specific original sight on the Sten is it doesn't have the extra part of the sight at the back of the gun, the part which obstructs your view. I can show you here what it looked like using the Latty sight on a different SMG. Now, I still use this sight for all of my SMGs, but I'm not at all happy with it being the best selection for me. And that resulted in me using the Sten a lot in order to use that very clear Latty sight. Now, I'll go into more detail about that soon, but essentially what's happened is DICE have now added that other obstructive part of the sight to the Sten, so it now looks like this, the same as all the other SMGs. Basically, what I mean is they've removed the sight that I like to use, which I thought was the best sight in the game, not scope, but best sight, and have replaced it or remade it into the same as every other Latty sight in the game, which is a massive disappointment for me. I honestly really wanted them to leave it alone. Now let me explain why, because it's not what many people are already starting to type, you know, stop crying because they fixed something you used or whatever. It's not about that at all. My issue doesn't lie in the fact that this apparent bug is gone, and I'm actually glad that they're still clearing up bugs where they can, even if they're, creating more each time. Now, I think the issue lies in the overall selection of sights for SMGs. They're just bad in a lot of ways. The Latty sight I think is the best, and yet it's wildly unpopular among the mass player base, and I totally understand why. But then also, the iron sights are very often hard to use because again they're obstructive, although apparently they've been somewhat improved in this patch. I still don't think it's great. The NIDAR sight has no magnification and can be pretty unclear to look through in excessively dark or bright areas, and blah blah blah, etc etc. Basically, the Latty on the Sten provided some respite in terms of just being able to see clearly whilst using an SMG. This is in a game with extremely large maps, vast wide open areas, and overall pretty poor visibility. So yes, it does make sense that DICE have fixed this and made the Latty sight the same across the board, but I think it's a real shame. It honestly doesn't make sense to have one version of one sight be different in the game. I totally get that, but that doesn't necessarily mean the right solution is to have this current selection of sights as they are. I understand fully that SMGs are close-range weapons, and thus maybe the idea is they're not supposed to be able to see long range. That's fine, but being able to see a bit more clearly would seem more fair. Currently, the range issue is just being compounded by the sights. I think perhaps a fair alteration would be for the Latty sight to still be pretty historically accurate, but make it so you can see more clearly through it, just by a bit. Or perhaps cleaning up the NIDAR sight so it doesn't look grimy and dirty sometimes, and give it some slight magnification. Maybe make the iron sights just a little bit less obstructive. These aren't huge alterations. They're minor, and I don't think they negatively impact the game in any way regarding accuracy or authenticity. Plus, it is a game after all. And this leads me on to my main point: realism and continuity versus game design and balance. This is a bigger issue in Battlefield than any other game I've ever played. And in Battlefield 5, it seems to be intensified. Is it supposed to be realistic, like a military simulator? Or is it supposed to be fun and somewhat balanced? A few steps up from something like Call of Duty in terms of authenticity. Well, I think it lies somewhere in between. And that's the issue. Not necessarily the issue for the game itself, but for the community. Because some want the game to be fun and well balanced, and full disclosure, that's someone like me, and others seemingly want realism above all else, regardless of how it might negatively impact the playing experience. They just want it to be accurate and realistic. Now that applies to the now removed, or I guess altered, Sten Latty sight. It was good for balance, for playing experience, and for fun factor, but it was bad for authenticity, so it was altered. And now if we stick with the Latty sights as they are, it's again good for authenticity and continuity, but bad for balance and fun. This can be applied to another topic I talked about recently. I said that MMGs in their current form have an overall negative impact upon the playing experience. Now, some disagreed because they purely just didn't see it the same way, which is fine. Some disagreed and gave some reasonable counterpoints, which again is fine. But then many disagreed because of realism, and I just can't get on board with that. Using realism as a defense in a game like Battlefield doesn't cut much ice with me. For one, it's not as if everything in the game had to be in the game. MMGs, or the concept of MMGs, or MMGs of this nature or whatever, didn't have to be implemented in the game. And some said, well, it can't be World War II without the MG42 or whatever, but I'm sure there's a way that they could do this where this isn't the end result. Because, you know, my follow-on point is that game developers can tweak a lot to alter something in the game without making it entirely different. It can still be somewhat historically accurate without negatively impacting the overall meta of the game. Then also, Battlefield isn't realistic anyway. People can't actually take this many bullets. People can't respawn. People likely didn't survive being hit by an AT mine. They didn't brush off a tank firing a shell right next to them. People weren't revived by you running over and just pulling them off the floor. You know, I'm sure you see what I'm saying. It's the problem of relying upon realism as a defense, but only when it suits something that that person supports. We can't really pick and choose like that and still have a valid argument. You know, I've seen it before where people have claimed that MMGs are fine like this because it's realistic, but then they'll complain about something like shotguns being able to kill them from too far away and stuff like that. In reality, shotguns can do damage far further than in a video game and put you down. But again, many people only complain when it supports what they like to do. I don't mind if you play aggressively or passively or whatever. And although I'm an aggressive player, I will generally do what suits the situation. But I feel like putting in a gun which really promotes just staying stationary wasn't a wonderful idea. Like, sure, you can't aim an MG42 while standing in reality, at least not well, but that's not the problem. Implementing that into the game isn't the only available alteration. I hope you see what I mean. These things are often considered in such black and white terms, and people are so quick to get angry about it, but we can all just breathe and think about what works best for the overall experience. And I didn't mean to go on for so long about MMGs, it's not actually about that, it's about the overall issue of realism versus balance. And that problem does and probably will continue to rage on. This, however, doesn't stop DICE from having the opportunity to improve the sights for the SMGs, as I stated earlier, and I think it will be a good move. But realistically, I think they probably have bigger problems to handle, much bigger problems, and I understand that. And I do think SMGs are still usable and fun overall, far better than they used to be, thank God. I just also can't really argue when anyone says they think the SMG sights are bad and thus don't use them. I get it, and having less medics around isn't a great thing, but alas, such is life. And so I ask, what do you think about anything and everything I've talked about today? Did you like the original Stenlati sight? Did you even know about it? And what do you think of realism versus balance? Let me know in the comments below. Just so you're aware, I have an important video coming out either tomorrow or the day after about what you can expect on this channel moving forwards. It's time for some big changes, so be sure to look out for that, stay informed, and be available to leave me your suggestions as well, because I do like hearing from the community what they're interested in. I'm gonna let some gameplay play out now with some background music for a few reasons. Firstly, because I know some of you like it, as you've told me before. Secondly, because I hear so much about YouTube not promoting shorter videos as much as longer ones, and I can't really afford that. And thirdly, because I'm going to struggle to find a way to use all of this outdated Stenlati footage I have stacked up now. So I may as well show you a chunk of it here. I really do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to subscribe to see more, turn on notifications because YouTube sucks, like the video, and join my Discord server in the description and my pinned comment. I'll also throw up the board of awesome at the end of the video for the epic people who support the channel on Patreon. I really do love and appreciate all of them. And with that all said, I'm GetGoodGuy, and I'll see you next time. Laters.